Hello everyone, and thanks for tuning into the latest opinion poll tracker video here at Gavin Partridge's YouTube channel. So once again, we're going to be having a look at the opinion polls that were conducted during the month of October 2023, last month. And we shall have a look at the prediction for the next UK general election from Electoral Calculus that is based upon those opinion polls. So, of course, the general election is probably around a year away, maybe a little bit less than a year now that we're into November, and we're getting ever closer to the next UK general election. And so, yes, we're going to have a prediction for Electoral Calculus and the opinion polls as well, so I should get to that for you in a moment. Just to say that if you're enjoying the content on the channel at the moment, please you like, share and subscribe, as you show everybody for doing that, and why not drop a comment, let us know what you think about this and all of our videos. Thank you so much, everybody. Though we do these tracker videos once a month. When we get to the general election itself, these videos will probably go daily, as most days during the general election there are at least a handful of opinion polls released. So we'll probably move this from a monthly tracker to a daily tracker during the general election. Although if that happens to be next autumn, I will be very, very busy with the day job as well. So I'm not sure I'll be able to do it daily. But it depends when the election is. If it's in the spring, then that will be no problem. My quiet time, you know, for the weather is always in sort of April, May time. So that would be no problem to do a daily tracker in the spring. Maybe a little bit more difficult in the autumn. But it just depends when the Prime Minister calls it. Anyway, let's have a look at the latest prediction. So I shall turn off the webcam. And we're going to go over to Electoral Calculus. We're going to have a look at their latest forecast. So in 3, 2, 1... there it is. Boom! And we see that for this month, they're forecasting, predicting a Labour majority of 236 seats, a massive landslide record majority of 236, and that is up 50 from the month before, actually. That's up 50 from October's prediction. This is the November prediction, of course, based on the opinion polls in October. So let's get into it then and have a look at the data. So we've got our party columns here: Conservative, Labour, Liberal Democrat, Reform, Green, SNP, Plaid, and the others, including the Northern Irish parties down there. 2019 votes and seats. Remember, prediction columns are just here. So Electoral Calculus is forecasting that the Conservatives at the next election will be on just 26.6% of the vote. That is down from 44.7% of the vote in the December 2019 election. So that's down, you know, by about 18% on the 2019 general election. Gives the Conservatives a central prediction of 133 seats, but a margin of error. Of course, with this at the high end, they could be as high as 245, which I think, given the way the polls are looking at the moment, wouldn't be a bad result for them. And at the low end, they could be as low as 49, which, of course, would be absolute oblivion and absolute wipeout there. Labour on a central prediction of 45.3% of the vote. That is up from 33% in 2019, so that's a 12% increase, or 12.3% increase on what they got in 2019, which would give them 443 seats with a margin of error. At the high end, they could go to 534, and at the low end, they could be on 331. Notice, even at their lowest end, at their worst possible result on these opinion polls, within the margin for error, they still are above 326, so they still get a small majority. Liberal Democrats on 10.6% of the predicted vote. That's actually down a little bit on what they got in 2019 when they was on 11.8. But despite that, they have a central prediction of 30 seats. At the high end, within the margin of error, could be as high as 50. And at the low end, they could be as low as 13, which is still 2 up on what they got in 2019. So despite their vote share being down, the Liberal Democrats actually have quite a significant gain in seats on the central prediction. And that's down to tactical voting, of course. That's where Labour voters vote tactically in Conservative Liberal Democrat seats to get the Conservative out or prevent the Conservative from winning. Reform are on 7.2%. That is up from 2.1% in the 2019 election. I suppose there would have been the Brexit Party. And that's still, despite that, they gives them a central prediction of no seats. And at the low end, they could be on no seats. And at the high end, they could get 1 seat. And then the Greens are on a central prediction of 5.3%. At the low end, they could be as low as 2.8% of that. So 5.3% is up from 2.8% in the 2019 election. Central prediction of 1 seat. At the low end, they could be as low as 1 seat. And at the high end, they could be as high as 2 seats. SNP, which is quite a significant change on what we saw in earlier tracker videos. So now the SNP on a central prediction of 3.4% of the vote, which gives them a central prediction of just 21 seats now. So they lose at least over half of the current seats that they currently have. At the high end, they could still hang on to 42 seats, but at the low end, they could go as low as 7. That, of course, a lot of those seats will be going directly from the SNP to Labour, which does help explain the high Labour prediction as well there. If they get a lot of their seats back in Scotland that they lost in 2015, that will help them greatly to form a majority government. Applied on a central prediction of 4 seats, they could be as low as 3, and they could be as high as 5 seats. A couple of points to draw your attention to. I would suggest in a general election it is quite unlikely that Reform will be as high as 7.2. I would take at least half of that off of that vote share off Reform, and probably give that to the Conservatives, actually. So that will get the Conservatives probably to 30% there or thereabouts. And again, the Greens, I think it's quite unlikely that they will be as high as 5.3%. They probably lose a couple of percent off that, at least, I would have thought. And that is likely to go to Labour, possibly to the Liberal Democrats, but mainly I would have thought that will go to Labour as well. So if you sort of take a chunk off Reform, take a chunk off Green, it virtually balances itself out. But it probably does help to get the Conservatives towards the 30% mark in reality. But anyway, record landslide prediction of 236 seats for Labour. And that's way above what Tony Blair achieved in the 1997 general election, for example. So let's have a look at the polls that that prediction is based upon. These are all of them from Wikipedia for October 2023. So we start down here. The first poll of the month was repealed Wilton on the 1st of October, which found the Conservatives on 29%. And Labour on 43%, giving Labour a 14% lead. And you see it is a continuous sea of red from top to bottom, no sign of the Conservative leading a poll, an opinion poll, and they haven't done so since the autumn 2021. So it's been like 2 years now since the Conservatives last led an opinion poll. So going through some of the numbers, well, at the lower end, we've got Opinium just here on the 6th of October. They found Labour with just a 13% lead, which is solid, but it's not as high as a lot of the leads we see there. The Conservatives were on 29%, Labour on 42%. Opinium tends to have slightly lower Labour leads. We've also got let's have a look at another one. So we've also got, it's hard to find teams. We've got a 14% lead just about, which is Redfield Wilton again on the 15th of October. Again, Conservatives on 29%, Labour on 43%. But at the high end, we've got above 20% lead. So, for example, we've got Ipsos MORI here, our oldest pollster, from the 11th to the 18th of October. Their poll was conducted from and gave Labour a 20% lead, 44% to Labour, 24%, very bad score for Conservatives. YouGov as well, from the 17th to the 18th of October, they gave Labour a 22% lead, 47% to Labour, 25% to the Conservatives. We've got DeltaPoll up here from the 20th of October, giving Labour a 20% lead, 27% Conservative, 47% to Labour. We've got people polling. I don't know all that much about people polling, but they tend to have the biggest Labour leads, and they give Labour almost 30%, with the Conservatives down on 21%, which would be completely catastrophic for them, and Labour on 49%, almost next to 50% of the vote there with people polling. I would think that's likely to be the very highest end of the range, and that is unlikely to verify, but there we go. We've got BMG with a slightly lower Labour lead, 11 to 12th of October, 13% Labour lead with that one, giving Labour 43% and Conservatives 30%. So on that poll, the Conservatives did actually get to the all-important 30% mark, all important psychologically, because that's what they achieved in 1997. So if they poll under 30%, then they're polling under what they got in the 1997 wipeout there. Another poll had them at 30%, was more in common. Again, I don't know anything about them, but they again had Conservatives on 30%, Labour on 42%. And that's the smallest Labour lead, actually, I think, in October, 12%, which is still pretty good, very reliable. And if they got that in a general election, they will be getting a majority, probably not landslide, but they will be getting a majority with that, and I think they would be very, very happy with that. Another really large Labour lead is this one, 24% just here. That comes from YouGov, I think. 48% to Labour, 24% to the Conservatives. This one, Savanta, which used to be Comres, almost gets the Conservatives to 30%, so around 29% with that one, 46% to Labour, and that gives Labour a 17% lead. So the lead's either in the teens or the 20s. It does look as though I think the lead gets a little bit bigger after a by-election, because there are two by-elections, of course, in October. So we had Rutherglen West, well, three by-elections actually there was, Rutherglen and Hamilton West just here, and then of course we have Mid Bedfordshire and Tamworth just here. I think after Mid Beds and Tamworth in particular, the Labour lead probably does get larger here at the top end of the column. The final poll of the month was with YouGov, and they give Labour a 21% lead, so Conservatives on 23%, Labour on 44% of the vote. The Conservatives look like they're really stuck here on most of the polls under 30%, which would be obviously a very bad scenario for them, considering at the last election they polled well over 40% of the vote. So those are the polls that the prediction for electoral calculus are based upon. This is the opinion poll graph from Wikipedia, how it's currently looking. And you can see there has been a tick up and a drop down in the trend lines for Labour and Conservatives. So, we can see that the Labour trend line has lifted up, the Conservative trend line has dropped down. That's since the two by-elections, I think, that I'm talking about, Tamworth and Mid-Bed. So there's that encompasses some of the polls that have been conducted in November that we'll talk about next month, of course. But there's definitely been a widening of the already very large gap between Conservatives and Labour. So we see the Conservative trend line not really going anywhere far. They're not as low as they was back in the year of the Truss administration, that lasted all of 43 days or something, when that's when the lead absolutely widened out massively. Before that, in the final year or so of Boris Johnson's administration, but Labour lead was solid, but it wasn't anything particularly spectacular. But it was really in the Truss administration when we had the budget that went so badly wrong, that we see that the Labour and Conservative lead just absolutely opens out massively. And since then, Rishi did pull it back a little bit. He did get a little bit of a lift up there through the end of 2022 in 2023, but nowhere near enough, I don't think, to to suggest that there's going to be any other outcome of the next election other than a Labour government, whether that be through a majority or a landslide or even a minority. I think it does suggest that the public have made up their mind really how solid this Labour lead is. The public have made up their mind, and they want to change the government. But we shall see. There is, probably a year or so to go. We might see. I think we will see. I've talked about swing back before, of course. You do normally get a swing back to the government. So as we go, particularly from around January onwards, I'll be looking the Conservative trend line to lift up a little bit. I think it probably will lift up a little bit. Labour's probably will drop a little bit as we go into next year. But I think the gap is so large, but it may get back to like where it was here. The gap between Conservatives and Labour, but I can't see how really the Conservatives can overtake Labour. So I think Labour will be winning the next election. The only question is by how much will they be winning by. This is how government approval is currently looking. So again, we see that the government, this is the YouGov track, of course, we see that the government's approval rating is under the don't knows still, which, as I've explained in previous tracker videos, is always a bad sign. At the moment, the latest poll, which is from the 30th of October, 67% are disapproving of the government, 15% are approving of the government, and it looks like 19% don't know whether they approve or disapprove of the government. So the number of people that are approving of this government are still under the people that don't know, 67%. Are disapproving. Again, that's not quite as bad as it was like this time last year, when the number of people disapproving of the government was up there and the number approving of the government was down there. So if we go back to that, that was actually that's actually 70. That's from the 17th of October 2022. Depths of unpopularity for the government, 77% disapproving of the government, 8% approving, and 16% didn't know. So it's not quite as bad as that, but it's still pretty bad. It's still very bad. The government is in a very, very bad state of unpopularity and disapproval at the moment. And as I say, it does look as though the public have really made up their mind that they think it's time for a change and they want to change. But there's still a year to go, so I thought just to have a look at the calendar for 2024, see when the next election might be. So the election has to be before January the 28th, 2025, so we can actually go to that actually and have a quick look. So there's the calendar for January 2025. So this is the maximum date that the election can be. I believe it's the 28th of January 2025, based on when the Parliament began in December 2019. Of course, it's unlikely we'll be going to the polls in January, and typically our elections are held on Thursdays, actually, so the latest date in reality will probably be Thursday, the 23rd of January. It's unlikely we're going to polls in January, but you never know with politicians. They, when they're facing a defeat, they do like to hold on as long as they possibly can. In reality, I think the election is likely to be next year, so I suppose the spring is a possibility. We've got the 2nd of May, 9th of May, 16th of May. Local elections will be on the 2nd of May, I think, next year. So that normally would be the most likely date for the election in the spring, and tying in with the local election. Sometimes they happen in June, so we've got the 6th and the 13th. 20th, 27th of June. But I think more likely is that the election will be held in the autumn. And that would typically be either October, well, usually October if it's an autumn election, occasionally could be November, but I would think October's most likely, so that gives us the 3rd, the 10th, the 17th, it's my birthday, 24th and 31st of October. I did see some newspaper reports a couple of days ago, or about a week ago, suggesting that Rishi Sunak has penciled in 31st of October, so a Halloween election. But I think a Halloween election, will they really do that? Will they really go for Halloween? You can see headlines now, can't you? Nightmare on Downing Street and all of that sort of thing. So I would think, they were talking about Halloween budget, wasn't they? With the Truss administration, I think, when she took over, and in the end it ended up a couple of weeks before Halloween, again due to the potential newspaper headlines that you could get, media headlines. So I don't think they'll go for 31st of October, so I would think that the most likely dates there the 10th, probably not the 3rd, because that would mean that the election would have to be called, probably at the end of August, and the political class are all on holiday then, so I doubt they'll go as early as the 3rd of October, so I would think it's most likely to be the 10th, the 17th, so that brings it to my birthday. I would have a birthday election. That's what I'm personally keep my fingers crossed for, because it'd be a birthday to remember, wouldn't it? Or the 24th. So, I think it's likely to be before the clocks go back. Clocks will go back next year over on the overnight of the 26th, 27th of October. So I think those 3 dates, the 10th, yes, the 17th as well, and not just because it's my birthday, but I genuinely do think like the 10th, 17th or the 24th of October are the most likely dates. If it was to be pushed into November, then we've got the 7th or the 14th or the 21st or the 28th. Then if it's pushed into December, another December election, that will be the 5th, the 12th, the 19th. I think we can rule out Boxing Day. So possibly the 12th. I mean, it was the 12th of December 2019 that we had the last election. So the calendar is actually the same next year as it was in 2019. But again, I just can't really see that they're going to want to go for another winter election. I'll be honest, it was pretty grim, I think, for everybody involved, mooching around the country, in the depths of winter, in the pouring rain. I think it's going to be October. But anyway, let me know in the comments what you think, when you think it's going to be. As I say, politicians do like to kind of push things and push things and push things, and I hope something turns up when they're heading for a defeat. And it is in the gift of Rishi now. We don't have the Parliament Act anymore, so it's whenever Rishi wants to go between now and January 2025. As I say, it has to be before January 2025. It couldn't go to February 2025, or not without, Parliament's approval anyway. And that would only happen in the case of a severe crisis such as World War, for example, pandemic, something that would mean that the Parliament has to be extended. That happened between 1935 and 1945. I think that's the last time that happened. Oh, possibly again, it was, I think it wasn't. I was going to say 2001 for foot and mouth, but there was no act involved in that. Tony Blair just delayed it by a month compared to when he had it penciled in for. But there was no Parliament approval with that because it was still within. It was like 4 years and a bit from the previous election rather than 5. So I think the last time an election was actually delayed, postponed, was during the Second World War, so the election should have been held in 1940 after the 1935 election. Because of the war, it was delayed until 1945, so that Parliament went on for 10 years, from 1935 to 1945. But hopefully there won't be a world war, and hopefully we will have the election next year. And as I say, I think it's likely to be October. But please let me know in the comments when you think the election is likely to be. Have you got a date in mind when you think that could be held? And let me know. So we'll do it. So that's anyway. The central prediction for Labour have an overall majority of 236 seats, massive landslide, and we'll see how the opinion polls and the prediction are looking next month in December. If you've enjoyed this video, please do like, share, and subscribe to our channel, and we'll see you again very, very soon. Thanks for watching, and bye for now.